Hi, everybody. Jason Zickerman here, and welcome to the Leadership Exchange, where we have candid conversations with forward thinking leaders who are shaping the future of business. This podcast is for business leaders by business leaders. So I've been leading the organization called the Alternative Board for quite some time, and we are filled with that's who we deal with are the business owners. So we're just so delighted to have our guests with us today because today we're talking about something that sits underneath every decision a business owner makes, every risk they take or don't take, and every version of success that allows themselves to pursue. We're talking about belief, everybody, and specifically the beliefs that hold us back without us ever even knowing it's happening. Our guest today is Nir Eyal, who is a New York Times bestselling author, former Stanford lecturer, one of the most influential voices in behavioral science today. His books, Hooked and Indistractable, have sold over 1 million copies across more than 30 languages. And his newest book, Beyond Belief, is out now, and we are excited to dig into the ideas behind it today. So, Nir, welcome to the Leadership Exchange. And I'm just so grateful that you're able to meet with us because Nir happens to be on this huge book tour around the world right now. So, to take time and meet with us is really appreciated.
Of
So,
course. My
super
honor.
happy
Thank
to
you for
have you
having
here.
me. Of course. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me.
It's our pleasure, truly. So, Nir, let's jump into this thing.
Mm.
You spent your career at this point at the intersection of psychology, technology, and human behavior. And this is a space that very few people were paying attention to when you first started digging into all this. So, what was it? What was it, Nir, that pulled you into this type of space? And how did that curiosity eventually become the work that you are now around the world known for today?
Thank you. Yeah. So it started out where, so I've started several companies, the last of which was at the intersection of gaming and advertising. And I learned a lot about how these companies, it was based in Silicon Valley. It was right after I graduated from Stanford Business School. And I started this company. And a lot of my clients, I could see these companies. Some of them would succeed and die based on how well they retained customers. That became this new paradigm. This was a long time ago. This was back in 2007. So the Apple App Store didn't even exist at that point. It was still a
No, it
year
didn't.
out. And I remember thinking, okay, when my last company was acquired, I wanted to start another business, and I knew that habits were going to make a big difference in the future of business. And the reason I believe that was because I could see as we went from the desktop, right, a big screen on your desk, to the laptop, slightly smaller screen, to the mobile device, even smaller screen, to the wearable device, even smaller screen, to now the auditory devices that you just speak to that have no screen. I had a very strong hypothesis that the winners of the future of business would be the ones who are able to capture customer habits. But when I looked for a book on how to build habit forming products, I didn't see such a book. I saw a lot of books on how to build personal habits, right? How to like get in shape and, get into a writing habit or a meditation habit, but I didn't see any books on how to build a habit forming product. So I started codifying what I was learning from many of my clients who were companies like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp and Slack and Snapchat and Amazon. I worked with many of these companies. I frankly, between us, I stole their secrets. I looked not internally, but just from observing their
I
products
understand.
as
Yeah.
a user and comparing that to what I was learning at Stanford in the psychology of how products get users hooked. I was able to create a guide for the rest of us because I felt very strongly that these techniques to get people to keep coming back to your business shouldn't be something that's monopolized just by the casinos, by the gaming companies, by the social media companies. What if we could use the psychology of what keeps us hooked to all these products to get us to exercise or to eat right or to save money or to connect with loved ones? And that's exactly what happened. So I started writing about this on my blog. The blog turned into a class. I ended up teaching at the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford and the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And then that turned into my first book, Hooked. And I didn't set out to be an author. I was always an entrepreneur. This was my third company, but I ended up enjoying what I was doing so much, and I got to work with so many companies. And what ended up happening is I got so many investment opportunities based on the book because I only invest in companies that use the hook model. So Canva, maybe you've heard of Canva,
Yeah,
Kahoot, another
absolutely.
unicorn. So I've been able, very lucky to invest in companies that use the hook model, and that's all I invest in. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time. And then I've also written a few books since that you mentioned as well.
That's amazing. Great story. And what a really neat evolution. And I could see it how that would continue to take you on that path. Your body of work, Nir, has taken some interesting turns over the years, right? From understanding how behavior gets shaped to how to reclaim control of our own attention, which, my Lord, boy, could I use that.
We're cut
And
from the same
now,
cloth.
right? Come on. And now to the belief sitting underneath all of it.
Yeah.
So this is a fascinating topic because it absolutely really rang my bell when I was learning about what you were writing about. So looking back, does it feel like a natural progression to you, or when you was doing each one of your researches and your books and whatever, did it somehow lead you in this direction,
Mm.
or something new pop out? How did this come about?
So Hooked is about how to build habit forming products. So it's about how can we use the psychology of product design to get people to come back. Because we know it's a much higher ROI to keep a customer than to find a new one. And
Right.
so I wanted to figure out what was the psychology of doing that. How is it that these huge tech companies are so good at getting people to come back to their products? And it turns out that all kinds of businesses can use it. And in fact, that's what's happened. Fitbod uses the hook model to get people hooked on exercising. Duolingo uses the hook model to get people hooked on learning a new language. So
Right.
all kinds of businesses can use consumer psychology to bring consumers back, and it's a
And this
very,
is where
very
your gaming world meets the psychology as well, right?
that's part of it. Yeah, exactly. So I break down in Hooked exactly the 4 steps of how to build a habit forming product. So that was book number one. And then a few years after I wrote Hooked, I had some time with my daughter. We just had a nice day planned. And I remember that we had this book of activities that dads and daughters could do. And one of them was, have a Sudoku, do a Sudoku puzzle together. Another one was have a paper airplane throwing contest. And one of the questions in this book, one of the activities, was to ask each other this question. The question was, if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want? And I remember that question verbatim, but I can't tell you what my daughter said because in that moment, I thought it was a good idea, honey. Let me just check my phone real quick. I just got to do this one thing real quick. And by the time I looked back from my device, she was gone because she had gotten a very clear message that whatever I was doing on my phone was more important than she was. And so that's when I learned that the superpower that I would most want would be the power to be indistractable, the power to do what you say you're going to do. Now, a lot of people out there will tell you that distraction is all about your phones and the phones are addicting you and they're hijacking your brain and they're all terrible. That's not my perspective. It's typically professors who are tenured, who can't get fired, who tell you stop checking email, stop checking your phone because, they can't get fired. But normal people who are running businesses, we need to use our devices, okay? And it turns out that the real
I feel
problem
like you just gave me permission for my faults in my
Go,
life.
you got it. You got it. I mean, look, I write books. I don't write books because of what I know. I write books because of what I want to know. That's why I love my job so much. I'm curious about a problem. I read other books on this problem. Most of the time, somebody else has the answer. But every 5, 6 years or so, when I read everybody else's book on the topic and they don't do it for me, right? Like it's not very practical to tell people, stop using your phones. Let's wait for the government to fix this problem. Let's wait till Facebook fixes it or Netflix. Or what are we going to do? We're going to say, hey, Netflix, your shows are so good. Please stop making them entertaining. That's stupid. That's not going to
Right.
work. And yes,
No.
they use the algorithms and yes, they get you hooked. I know exactly how they get you hooked. I wrote the book Hooked. I know all their tricks. I was saying this stuff, when I wrote Hooked, I had to convince people that these companies didn't just get lucky, that they know how to make you click and how to make you tick better than you know yourself. And I had to, emphatically prove that this was going on. Today, nobody thinks that anymore. Now the pendulum has gone way the other direction. We think we're powerless, and that is not true. So the reason I wrote Indistractable was to fix my own problem, and it turns out the solution is much more interesting and much more empowering than just get rid of your phones. And it turns out that there's a real profit motive here, because what I'm seeing in corporate America, you tell me as well, is that people in corporate America are incredibly distracted. Whether it's meetings that people didn't need to attend, whether it's stupid emails that they didn't need to receive or send, whether it's trying to focus on one task and yet you can't help but putting out a million fires at once and you can't focus on the important work. And so I think the skill of the century, AI is nice and all that stuff that we keep talking about, that's child's play. Because I think the skill of the century, where we have so much information, and yet we have a deficit of knowing how to turn that information into action. That's the problem. We keep getting in our own way. We know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, ask ChatGPT, ask Google, buy a book. We know what to do. We just don't do it. And
Right.
so we keep getting distracted. So that's what Indistractable is for. That's what led me from book 1 to book 2. So there was a natural progression there. With Beyond Belief, I'll tell you what
Right.
spurred that.
Please.
So with Beyond
But
Belief,
I could see how it
yeah.
did one led to the other. So now
Yeah.
this now lead to the other?
Yeah. So Hooked was about how do you build products that build good habits in people's lives. Indistractable was about how do you break bad habits, different products, right? We want to get hooked to the exercise app, and we want to get unhooked from the social
The
media
doom
or
scrolling or whatever it
sports
might be,
or
right?
too much time with the TV or whatever, doom scrolling, exactly. So it's different products, right? It's we want good habits, and we want to break the bad habits. Now, after I spent 5 years writing Indistractable, I started getting some funny phone calls. And the phone calls sounded like this. I would get a call from somebody. I do these office hours where anybody who's read one of my books, sometimes they have to wait in line a little bit, but they can call me. We talk about anything they want to talk about if they've read one of my books. So every once in a while, not every call, but maybe, I don't know, 1 out of 20, somebody would call me and say, "Hey, Nir, I read Indistractable. I really loved it. Very good book. I just want you to know, though, it didn't work for me. It didn't work in my situation." And I'd say, "Oh, that's very interesting. Tell me more. I spent 5 years writing it. There's 30 pages of citations to peer-reviewed studies. It's sold over 500,000 copies. It's changed my life. I want to know, like, tell me what didn't work. Let's go step by step. Let's start with step one. How did step one go for you?" And they'd say, I read step one. I read it. I definitely read it. It's just that I didn't do it. I'd say, "Okay, I understand. No problem. Maybe that one was confusing or something. Let's go to step two. How did step two go?" And they'd say, I read step two. I read that one too. I definitely read it. It's just that I didn't do that one either." And I was kind of confused. People would wait for months sometimes to tell the author of a book that they had read that the thing that they didn't do didn't work. And I was kind of scratching my head here. Why is that? I've given you the information all on a silver platter, this thing that everybody complains about. We're so distracted. Here, it's going to take you what, an hour and a half to read the book, and it will change your life, but you have to do it. And I didn't understand why people didn't do it. And then I realized, you know what? I do this. I have bookcases full of books that I've read and haven't put into practice. I've listened to podcast episodes and YouTube videos and paid experts and consultants to tell me what to do, and also haven't done it sometimes.
You're
Why?
making me very uncomfortable, Near, because I'm thinking of a specific book that I'm completely bought into, but I haven't done
Yeah,
what I'm so,
we
yeah.
we've all got it. So why? So why is that? And so why, we keep absorbing more and more information without putting it into practice. And I
Mm.
wanted to again fix it for myself. I was really curious and I couldn't find a book that would explain it. And so that's what Beyond Belief is about. Because what Beyond Belief really challenges is our basic model of motivation. That we think that motivation, what I learned, I was an econ major in college, what I learned, what they taught me is that behavior is driven by benefit, right? I need some kind of incentive. I want some kind of reward, some kind of benefit in order to do the behavior. If you do your job description, you get a paycheck.
Right.
And that's how we influence people. That's how we motivate them. But anybody who's actually run a business before, there's something missing. It's not that easy. There's definitely something missing. And what's missing is belief. That if I don't believe, let's say in my boss, if I don't believe in you as a manager, if I don't believe in the direction you're taking the company, or if I don't believe you're going to give me that promotion or that raise I want, if I don't believe that's going to happen, you have my best interest at heart. Am I going to work hard? Am I going to stay motivated? Not for very long. Conversely, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot, even when you know exactly what to do, right? How many employees do we have who they know exactly what to do. The manual is right there. They have the experience. They're totally qualified. They know step by step exactly what needs to get done. But if you don't believe you can do it, if you don't believe you can succeed, you also won't stay motivated. So
Mm.
motivation is not a straight line. Motivation is a triangle. We need not only to know what we're going to do, the behavior, we not only need the benefit, why we're doing it, but most importantly, we need the belief that holds it all together. That is what sustains long-term motivation. So whether it's for ourselves, for our family members, for our kids, for our employees, you have to understand beliefs if you want to understand how to get the most out of yourself and others.
It's beautiful the way you explain that. So, staying on that particular point, the conventional wisdom that everyone has always been saying, and you hear people say it all the time: seeing is believing, seeing is
Mm,
believing, seeing is believing.
mm,
But you're saying something different. You're
mm.
saying through your research, it's actually much closer to the opposite of the truth, that believing is seeing.
That's exactly right.
So, so with that new construct, can you kind of unpack that a little bit
Sure.
and talk to us a little bit about what would you say is the main takeaway that our audience of business owners should take from that?
Yeah.
Believing is seeing, and how do you put that into your reality?
Right. So beliefs have these three powers. Actually, first, before I go into that, let's define what am I talking about when I say beliefs?
Go for
Beliefs
it.
are not facts. We use those words interchangeably, that I believe XYZ, but belief is not a fact. A fact is an objective truth. It is something that is true whether or not you believe in it. The
Right.
world is more like a sphere than it is flat. I'm sorry if you have any flat earthers in the audience. The world doesn't care what you believe. The world is round. Sorry, it's not flat. Okay, it's an objective truth.
Full stop.
Yes, full stop. Now, on the other end is faith. Faith is a conviction that does not require evidence. God rewards the righteous. There's no amount of evidence that's required for a statement like that, nor should there be. It's a matter of faith. But between fact and faith is something very special. And this is what we call a belief. A belief is a conviction that is open to revision based on new evidence. That's the definition of a belief. So, what makes beliefs so special is that unlike faith, which almost never changes, unlike facts, which you cannot change, beliefs are malleable. We can change our beliefs. So if you want the most powerful takeaway from my book, from the 6 years of research, it's this: beliefs are tools, not truths.
Beliefs are tools, not truths. That's
Exactly.
an important statement.
Beliefs are tools, not truths. They don't have to be true for them to be useful. Let me give you an example. At Amazon, they have these 16 leadership principles, and everybody knows them. Every Amazonian will spout off these leadership principles, and they use them in decision making. You'll see them passing them along in an email. Well, that violates principle, this principle, or that, or in a meeting, they'll call each other out based on these principles. One of those principles is it's always day one. It's always day one. Now, does it strike you as funny that that is demonstrably not true? It is not day one. That is a lie. It has not been day one for quite
Right.
some time, right? The
Right.
company's worth what, over $1 trillion today? It's not day one, right?
No doubt about it.
Right? But they
Yeah.
have this belief. It's always day one at Amazon. It's something they repeat again and again, and it guides their decision making because one of their values is that we should try and run as lean as possible, just like a startup where it's day one, so that we can pass on our savings to our customers. That is a belief that the founders had in the company about how the company should be run. And they stuck to that by codifying it into these leadership principles. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's true, it's useful. Beliefs are tools, not truths. Because the powers of belief are thus there are three powers of beliefs. Beliefs have the power to change what you see, what you feel, not just your feelings, but your physiological state, how you actually experience pain and suffering. It's incredible. And finally, what you do. So back to your question about how is it that beliefs can change what we see, that, we like to say that seeing is believing, but I would argue that just as true is that believing is seeing. Not just seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. That what you believe will literally change, not figuratively, not metaphorically, but what you believe will literally change what you see, and I'll prove it to you. There was a
All
study
right.
done a few years ago where they asked two groups of people to do a very simple task. The task was to look through a newspaper that they had given them and simply count how many images. Okay, how many photographs do you see in this newspaper? Now, the two groups were people who either believed they were lucky or unlucky. It wasn't a fact. They didn't follow them around and actually determine if they were luckier than anybody else or unluckier. They just asked them, do you believe that you are a lucky person or an unlucky person in general?
Okay.
The people who believed they were unlucky, on average, took 2.5 minutes to finish this task. 2.5 minutes. The lucky people took just 11 seconds. Why? Why the difference? Well, on page 2 of this newspaper, there was one image that said in big bold letters, there are 43 images in this newspaper. Collect your reward. The lucky people immediately saw it, read it, got up from their chair, collected their reward, and they were out the door in 11 seconds. The unlucky people, even though we know they saw the image, how do we know we saw the image? Because they correctly registered 43 images at the end of this examination. We know they saw that image, but it
They
took
didn't
them
believe it.
two and a half
They wanted
minutes
to.
because
Yeah.
stuff like that doesn't happen to me, right? Can't be that easy. And so they never saw the opportunity that was literally under their nose, staring at them. They couldn't see the image. It wasn't their fault. It was just that their beliefs were changing how they saw reality. And that's just one example. In the book, I give many examples of how believing is seeing. For example, we know that people on a diet see food as physically larger. That people who are afraid of heights see distances as further away. So when an entrepreneur, there's an amazing quality of entrepreneurs that in psychology we call entrepreneurial alertness, which is this tendency that entrepreneurs have to see things that other people can't see. And sometimes they're very frustrated by this. I know people in your audience are shaking their heads right now and saying, nodding
No
along,
doubt
saying, "Oh
about
yeah,
it.
that how many times have you seen an opportunity that is so clear, is so obvious that of course we should do this? Why aren't we doing this? Everybody, get to work. We need to do this." And those around you have no clue what you're talking about. It's not their fault. They just can't see it. They don't have the beliefs which allow them to see what you see. That an entrepreneur sees $100 bills all over the place. And the rest of us, right, the normal people, they don't know what you're talking about. So our
Wow.
beliefs really do shape what we're able to see.
What a great perspective. Really a great perspective, Nir.
Mm.
So similar to believing is seeing is believing and opposite, there's a other conventional, well, I should say this, that there's the phrase of limiting beliefs. It
Mm-hmm.
gets used a ton.
Yeah.
You hear people always talk about limiting beliefs, whether it be in our self-help circles, whether we're in coaching, whether in leadership development, all of those areas you people. But what makes your treatment of this, or you've been studying about this for a while. So as you start studying limiting beliefs and what holds people back or their belief or the lack thereof, what does all your research of behavioral science actually really tell us about that the broader conversation when people talk about it really doesn't touch on it? What
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that? There's something more to it that we're not touching on.
That's right. So I think what's been lacking, at least for me, was a solid understanding of what limiting beliefs are, how to spot them, and what to do about them in ourselves and in others. And so let's start with what they are. So, a limiting belief is a belief that lowers your motivation. Remember, we talked about the motivation triangle, how you need a benefit, a behavior, and a belief. So, a limiting belief is a belief that saps your motivation while increasing your suffering. Now, the hard thing about limiting beliefs is that they're always hidden to us. And I've
Right.
interviewed billionaires to people who are broke for this book. And I will tell you, we all have these limiting beliefs. We all have them. We know people, I've met people who are amazing in business, but neglect their family, are incredible in the arts, but don't take care of their body. We all have these limiting beliefs in one area of our life or another, but we can't see them. Why can't we see them? Well, limiting beliefs are sort of like your face, that we all have a face. But if I asked you, please look at your face, you can't look at your face, right? You could, interestingly enough, you can look at other people's faces. Do you notice that? Just like you can see everybody else's limiting beliefs, right? You can see your employees' limiting beliefs, you can see your spouse's limiting, your kids, you can see everybody else's limiting beliefs. You can't see your own. So to see your own limiting beliefs, you need something outside of yourself. Just to see your own face, you have to have a mirror. You need something to reflect. And so it turns out that there's a process, there's a methodology to uncover your limiting beliefs and do something about them, to turn them around into what's called a liberating belief. A liberating belief is the opposite of a limiting belief. A liberating belief increases your motivation and decreases your suffering. And that's really the point here, is that what we find is when we are suffering, we lose motivation, right? When I believe my boss is a jerk, this isn't going to work, things are too hard, I'm not cut out for this, I'm not ready, the market's tumbling, AI is going to take my jobs. It just goes on and on and on. None of these
Total
things, what I
spiral.
just said, none of these things are truths. None of them are objective. They're all subjective opinions, typically about the future, right? We see this right now with this AI panic. AI is going to take all our jobs. Do we know that? Is that a fact? We don't know. Nobody
But
knows.
you're saying they're hidden, and you want to take these hidden and turn them into liberating beliefs.
Right.
But I guess the question that I really have for you is, if they're hidden and they're not there, how do you find them? How do you identify these if they're hidden? And
Yeah.
because you can't turn it into a liberating belief unless you know what you're trying to do. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
So where there's smoke, there's fire. So what
Okay.
you do is you look for the suffering in your life. So one of the biggest unlocks that I found for myself in my own life over the past 6 years writing this book is that pain is separate from suffering. And this is not new. I didn't invent this, right? This is Stoic thinking, this is Buddhist thinking, that there's and now science is catching up, that we actually know in the brain pain is a different part of the brain than suffering. Pain is information, pain is signal. Suffering is the interpretation of that signal. So the way we unlock this is that we ask ourselves, where is the suffering in our life? It could be, the exercise I typically like to do with people is to ask yourself, what's that goal that you've been delaying? That thing that you've been wanting to do, that thing on your New Year's resolution that hasn't been done year after year. Maybe it's that relationship that could repair itself. Maybe it's something you're capable of that you haven't done. Maybe it's that person who pisses you off, right? If one of your employees comes to you and complains to you, this is how you might approach this. You ask them to write down what is the suffering in your life. Okay, I've seen this done with something as simple as it annoys me when I'm stuck in traffic, all the way up to I've seen someone use this process to work through the suffering of a terminal brain tumor. Okay, this woman was going to die from her brain tumor, and she used the same process to dissolve her suffering. So you can be useful for any amount of suffering in your life. So what you do is you ask yourself, where are you suffering? Why are you suffering? And then there's a process called inquiry-based stress reduction, which might take a few minutes, but I'll just introduce it to you very quickly. Is a process to collect a portfolio of perspectives. Because one of the things we know about the brain is that the brain hates changing its mind. If you just go telling people what's right and wrong, they will push back on you. We've all seen this, right?
Absolutely.
That people aren't just persuaded with facts. Facts are helpful, but it's really about beliefs, because the brain hates changing its mind. Why does the brain change its mind? Why do we even have limiting beliefs? Why would we have beliefs that intentionally reduce our motivation and increase our suffering on an evolutionary basis? Why would that make any sense? Well, there's a very good reason. You see, the brain's primary directive is not to help you get rich or to live to your full potential or to make a difference in the world. The brain doesn't care about any of that stuff. The brain's primary job is to keep you alive. That's what your brain cares about more than anything else. So, the best way to keep you alive today is to keep you doing and believing whatever you did yesterday. Because you're here now, aren't you? And so, what we all have embedded, this gift of evolution gave us, is a brain that is constantly lying to us, telling us these limiting beliefs to keep us passive, to keep us from trying too hard, to keep us very far away from our natural limits. So, knowing that fact, what we're going to do is we're not going to try and change our mind or anybody else's mind. What we have to do is to collect this portfolio of perspectives. And there's a methodology here. There's a few steps, but I don't know if we're going to have time for it. But this is really what the book dives into, is how do you use those steps to not just come on with one belief? This is my belief. It's a fact. This is what happened, right? Joe was being a jerk to me. Okay. Well, can we collect a portfolio of perspectives and then not ask ourselves, which perspective is true, but which perspective is most useful, because beliefs are tools, not truths. And that's when everything unlocks. And now, once you learn that methodology, I do this 5, 6 times a day. And let me tell you, Jason, it has just transformed my life, my
So,
relationships.
so this is what you're saying. One has to do when you have identified that you have a limiting belief. This is the process and the exercise that you would say for someone to go into. Is
Right. I
that what
mean,
you're suggesting?
right. So it comes from a process called inquiry-based stress reduction. We didn't go over actually how to do it,
Yeah.
but those are the big pillars of you ask yourself, where you're suffering, why are you suffering? You take out that belief, you do a turnaround, and then you adopt what's called a liberating belief that you're going to reinforce until it crowds out that limiting belief that's causing you suffering. And turns out, if you do that, your suffering dissolves. You don't have to suffer.
You don't have to. And
Nope.
this
You're
is
still going to
all
feel pain, by the way. You're still going to have
right.
pain. Pain is guaranteed, but you won't suffer from those things. Like stupid things, like annoyances in your life, the stress you have, the anxiety. It melts away. It dissolves. It really can work, and I've seen it happen not only for psychological suffering, for physical suffering. I document
Yeah.
many cases in the book of people curing chronic pain through the same exact procedures. It's incredible.
It's fantastic, Nir. So, at Tab, our model is built around, over the years, it's expanded for sure, but we built our whole concept around two things, and that's having peer advisory boards, where business owners who meet regularly to discuss challenges and opportunities with amongst a trusted group of peers, and then one-on-one coaching sessions.
Mm.
So as I'm listening to you and what you're talking about and actually getting perspectives and building that portfolio of observations, of course, how do you think an environment like that does that help people surrounding yourself with others who will tell you truth? Does that accelerate the process? Is that something that we should be digging into these peer advisory groups and helping people see
Yeah.
that? What are your thoughts on it?
I think it can be incredibly helpful if you have the right people. So if you have the wrong
Talk about
people, it's bad news. If you have the
right.
right people, and why do I say that? So it turns out that part of the flip side of entrepreneurial alertness we talked about earlier, where you can see things that other people can't see, is that you also can't see the truth that other people can sometimes see. So in the book, I document several entrepreneurs who are incredibly successful with their company, just incredible exits, $100 million type of exits from their businesses. And part of what gets them into trouble is that they cannot see things from other people's perspective. They can't see the reality that's in front of them. And so what the successful entrepreneurs do is what I call a kitchen cabinet. You have just a very few very trusted advisors who is not just anybody. You don't want people who see reality like everybody sees reality. You want special people who can see the reality from your perspective, who have your bravery, who have your courage, but also can call you out when you're making a mistake, when maybe you're not considering reality. Because again, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Your brain just won't let you see certain realities. So it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And so having a group of trusted advisors who are at your level or above, who can see things from your perspective and yet call you out when you need to be reined in, can be very, very useful.
Fantastic feedback. Yeah, I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours, but unfortunately, you don't have the time, and people don't have that type of attention span. So let me wrap it up with a question for you. You know, uh, I wanted to finish with something a little bit more personal, if that's
Sure.
okay. You've
Sure.
spent your career studying why people do what they do and what holds them back from what they're capable of. Is there a story, whether it be your own experience or whether it's someone that you've worked with, that a single shift in a belief changed everything for them, whether you or one of your
Mm.
someone you know dearly?
So the book is very personal. So there's many, many stories about my experience changing my beliefs. But I'll give you one quick story that I think really demonstrates this principle. I'm not sure if you're a tennis fan, but a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, Serena Williams was playing in Wimbledon, and she was not doing well. Her first few matches, she was not doing well, and the reason she wasn't doing well was that she wasn't rushing the net. She was hesitating, and the reason she was hesitating is because she believed that she wasn't very good at the net. And at
Hmm.
that level of the game, if you hesitate for even a millisecond, you're going to lose. Her coach, Patrick Montaglou, calls her over and he says, Serena, look, I've been looking at the stats. And did you know that 80% of the time that you rush the net, you score a point? And she says, what? Are you sure? I thought I was terrible at the net. And he says, well, look, statistics don't lie. This is the best news of the day. And it's true, statistics don't lie. But he did. That in fact, she was not making anywhere near 80% of the points at the net, not even close. But when he told her this lie, it became a reality. She wins the match and she takes Wimbledon that year. Now, people listening are thinking, is this guy telling me to just lie to people? Should I be delusional? Should I gaslight myself? Well, I would argue you are already lying to yourself. It is impossible to see reality clearly. You think you see reality as it is? Nothing could be further from the truth. We all distort reality based on our beliefs. Have you ever noticed that you cannot spell the word belief without a lie? It's right in the middle of the word.
Lie.
Belief. It's you cannot have a belief without a lie.
I love that,
So we
Nir.
are already lying to ourselves. We're just picking the wrong lie. Patrick Montaglou didn't make up something without evidence. He had seen what Serena was capable of. He didn't tell her she was an ostrich. He told her, you can perform at that level. And when he told her that, he unlocked what was already within her. And
You
that's
know,
how
it's
we need to
interesting.
deal with our people as well and with ourselves.
It's what a great story and a good example. The one I like to share also in a similar vein is there was belief for a long time that he could never break the 4 minute mile.
Yeah.
And
Bannister.
then when he broke the 4 minute mile after all that same year, three more people broke even that record.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just knowing that it's possible, it broke it. So it's right in the same vein as that.
Yeah.
Nia,
That's right.
I can't share with thank you enough for spending time
My
with us.
pleasure, of
You're
course. Anytime.
fascinating. You're dynamic, and I can't wait till you bring the book tour over to the States, and we'll make sure we find you.
That
So
sounds great.
thank you very much.
My
So with
pleasure.
that being said, that brings today's conversation to a close. So Nia, once again, thank you for joining and sharing your expertise. It no doubt is going to light people up when they hear it. And so to everyone listen, if you're able to walk away with insights that you can put into practice and to lead with purpose and confidence, that's what we really hope for all of you. So both in your business and in your life, we hope this was of value to you. So with that being said, I wish everybody please be safe, be well, and as always, be kind. Take care, everybody. Nir, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.